Anyway, how do you move on? Are we becoming more racist? Is it now been qualified by Donald Trump being in power and not addressing any of this, not quelling the fears of many people in North America? To talk more about all of this, Gary Dierenfeld is with us, social worker, yoursocialworker.com, to find out more. He is with us now. Hello, Gary. How are you today?
I'm good, and today I will spread the love to you because we need more of that everywhere.
Are you surprised he hasn't spoke out? He hasn't said something about this?
Oh, hell no. I'm not surprised whatsoever, Scott.
Well, I don't know. We're surprised he got this far. I thought maybe there'd be another surprise in there we could find.
No, not of that kind. He's not going to apologize. This is not an apologist person. This is a person who believes he can do no wrong. And, the question that was posed to me by your producer in setting this show up is, is that brand of racism, is it coming into Canada? Will it affect Canada? Are we seeing more racism in Canada? And the answer, sadly, from my perspective, is a resounding yes.
From your perspective, elaborate on that.
Well, I'm looking at more recent media reports. I'm looking at Justice Zabel bringing that hat into the courtroom, whether or not he's apologized. He brought the hat in. I'm looking at the alt-right posts that were put on street lamps in Toronto in the last few days. I'm looking at the guy here in Hamilton who thinks he had the right to bud in front of a black woman at the grocery store. There is a sense of giving racists permission to come out of the closet and ply their racist behavior. And I find that deplorable and scary at the same time.
Will he have to address this?
No, he won't. Will he have to address it? I mean,
if all of a sudden we see civil unrest and these protests turn into riots, I mean, he'll have to.
Well, no, I don't think he will. He's going to pretend that it's all other problems and everyone else's fault. If it is addressed, it's because we on the left of right, which doesn't mean far left, it just means, left of right, he will find a way to scapegoat those groups for having incited whatever riots. But even in the U.S., we're seeing a terrible increase in hate crimes as well. These are very scary times from my perspective. I liked your monologue, Scott, leading into this. This is not what World War II was about. It's not what we see ourselves as Canadian. Yet, there is that element. Hey, let's look back to our past election. You had Stephen Harper harping on the niqab or the burqa or the Muslim head covering.
Mm-hmm.
What's that about? You have Kelly Leach who wants to do her values test, and you sit back like, whose values, Kelly? Because my values are very different from yours. So this stuff is coming into the Canadian context. And I like to think of Canada as multicultural, and I view that as a good thing.
Here's an interesting email that, it's a transcript of a call that Jacob just got. You want to talk about Trump all the time, yet you won't discuss why all these Americans are angry and lost their jobs. Jacob, can you elaborate? Why don't you believe they why do you believe they lost their jobs? Jacob, you mean today? I think most people blame the recession of 2008 for the economic downturn. Caller, no, it was in 1975 with the introduction of free trade, globalism. Why don't you talk about that? And then, of course, there's a whole pile of F-bombs and such and references to Nazism. And then the person hangs up. This obviously signifies that group that is, and there are a lot of people that are disenfranchised, but many for different reasons. I don't understand how the economic downturn and whatever happened with, and if you want to talk about free trade and globalism, although I find these hilarious because we produce way more products than we ever consume, so if we don't sell them globally, we have no jobs.
Honestly, right?
I know. It's just so, it's just so 1950s mentality. It's beyond me.
Yep.
So, so obviously this person's talking about globalism and the fact that everybody's ticked off because they lost their manufacturing job, like however many years ago. What does that have to do with racism, though?
Here's what it has to do with racism. Whenever someone or some group of people experience hard luck, a downturn, things aren't going their way, it's nice if we can have somebody else to scapegoat. And so,
was there a lot of racism during the Great Depression?
I would have to imagine.
Probably was, right?
I would have to imagine. And so, and every generation has its new scapegoat.
Yeah.
So, at one point in time, it was the Jews. At another point in time, it was the Italians. At another point in time, it was the Irish.
Mm-hmm.
Then another point in time, it's the blacks. And the scapegoat du jour are Muslims or people with brown-colored skin.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about protectionism. It's all about looking for that scapegoat, somebody to blame and rally around, that if we call that person or group out as the boogeyman, somehow or other, our lives will be improved. And it's such magical thinking, it's fantastical, and it has nothing to do with reality. But unfortunately, we can stir up such nasty sentiments when things are changing and things aren't going our way. Look at global warming. So now Trump calls for clean coal. That's an oxymoron. There's no such thing as clean coal. Some may be cleaner than others,
it's
but
cleaner,
coal, by definition, is not a clean resource. And anyone else who and to say you believe in global warming, to me, it's not a belief. These are now facts.
Yeah.
So we still try to and because of global warming, because of these things, we do want to change our dependence off of fossil fuels. And there's going to be a very disenfranchised group because of that, the coal miners, the coal industry. And so it's easier to blame everyone else than to say, how are we going to adjust and move forward?
All right, so again, my mother grew up during World War II and Nazi-occupied Germany, all of that horrific time. We saw once the world gained atomic and nuclear power, how quickly things changed, and we decided we had to control this. 1980s, Reagan's, tear down the wall. And we've been going in that direction, and now all of a sudden, blammo. It's like we're going back to the 1930s again.
Yeah, because there's change in global economics. China is becoming quite the economic engine and superpower. It's moving forward. It's sucking all the money out of everyone else's economy. And rather than dealing with how are we going to do our work smarter, cheaper, faster, better, again, we're just looking for protectionism. Let's build the wall. Let's keep China out. Let's keep imports out. And if we can distract people by the change that the real change they have to embrace. I'm not talking about the Donald Trump change. That's not change. That's just racism. But if people can look, at the real change we have to do, then we're not going to be as distracted by the wall, the Muslims, the Jews, the whoever else. I feel like I am so hungover coming up and I know
it's like a week-long hangover.
I was on a phone call prior to speaking with you with a colleague in the U.S. She was calling me for a consultation on another matter, and I was letting her know that we in Canada feel the Trump effect and that I'm going to be on with you in a few minutes. She was gobsmacked. What? You in Canada, how does this affect you? And this is all we're talking about in Canada as well. I mean, we repudiated racism when we voted in Justin Trudeau. We embraced the fact of global warming, and that as Canadians, we're going to have to retool our economy around that, and that is how we will be successful on a go-forward basis.
So what does Donald Trump do now? Like, again, I think he has to say something, whether, certainly not an apology. I would agree with you. We're not going to get down that road, but certainly something that has a little bit more meat to the substance and more of a friendlier tone. He has to do that before the election.
That's like trying to shine.
What do you think is going to happen between now and January?
I was about to use some, what was it, George Carlin, the 7 words you can't use on radio and TV. I was about to use one of them. You can't shine poop, right?
Yeah.
So you know the other word I was going to use. And if he comes out and tries to smooth over some of that stuff, people are going to see beyond it, because they're looking at the other kind, or the kind of people Trump is going to surround himself with in his cabinet. And the persons he is currently already surrounding himself in cabinet hold far right of right views, are racist persons by their own policy, by their own actions, by what they have to say. So there is no way Trump can smooth over all of this stuff unless we are all in La La Land. So
is it like 4 years of this?
Yes. It is absolutely 4 years of this. And
what will this include?
How do we deal with it? My charge to the people is, I like what Barack said. Barack Obama said, "Don't boo, vote." And I'm saying, don't protest, because it's falling on deaf ears.
Yeah, it's too late.
That's right. Plan for the next election cycle.
Yeah.
Organize. Figure out who the right candidate is, and develop the infrastructure to support that candidate.
Why don't you think more people voted for Hillary? About 6 million Democrats stayed home. Lots will point to her career and this, that, and the other, but why would they not vote for her, maybe withholding the nose, just to avoid what happened?
You know what? Maybe smarter minds than mine have that. A lot of people did stay home. A lot of people may have thought it was a slam dunk for her.
Yeah.
We've seen that in other elections, that if we think it's a runaway for one candidate, we actually don't come out thinking everyone else will.
Yeah.
So it's hard to know 100%. Some people clearly didn't like Hillary for some reasons that were quite reasonable.
Yeah.
But
again, that's not the vote. The vote is between this person or that person.
Yes.
It's not just about that person. It's about both.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because everybody was so surprised about all of this.
Yep.
And
me too.
Come dinner time, the night of the election, I nailed it. I predicted it. And it was interesting. I was sitting around the table with my family, and we're yakking. And, unfortunately, my kids have become political junkies because of the house that they live in. And my 9-year-old son says, who do you think's going to win, Dad? And I stopped and I paused for a minute. And they, of course, thought I would give a quick, immediate answer. And I said, you know what? I think Trump's going to win. And they looked at me like I had a square head. And they said, why do you think that? And I said, because I've spent the last several weeks, months, talking to some of the smartest people in the country and in North America. And, I picture this as a 10-rung ladder. And the first one is him going down the escalator announcing. The 10th one is him actually getting the gig. And I said, all along the journey up this ladder, I asked everybody, how did he get to where he did? Nobody ever predicted this. So then when you're on the final rung of the ladder, the second last rung of the ladder, and you're standing on the 8th or 9th step, how can you possibly look down and go, I'm not going to make the next step? Mm-hmm. I mean, to me, and this was purely logical, pure, no sort of emotion or political preference of any sort. It was just, you know what? No one ever predicted he would get this far. How can you not give him the benefit of the doubt and think he's going to make the final step?
Right.
And as soon as the polls opened and immediately he took the lead and kept the lead through the whole night, to me that just confirmed it. And
I felt like I was watching a train wreck while I'm holding my hands over my eyes, peeking through the slits.
Yeah.
And finally, by 11 or 11:30 at night, I had to turn off the TV.
Mm-hmm.
The nausea was too much.
So you think that we are just going to have protests, perhaps riots, more like what we've seen over the Occupy movement, Black Lives Matter, this sort of thing? You think it's going to be 4 years of that?
I think people are venting their upset. And so I think there will be weeks to months of venting, particularly as the media inadvertently or directly inflames us with every Trump appointment, and then the dialogue about what that means. So I think we're into this for weeks to months to come. I'm hoping it does settle down and that people get into reorganization mode, because that's when we are most effective. And, I had put out a message through my Facebook feed and to Twitter that we need to present our better version of ourselves, that we do need to organize, and we do need to not get in the mud. Boy, a wise woman once said to me, when you get in the mud with the other pigs, we can't tell the pigs apart. And I thought those wise words stuck with me. So I'm not getting into the mud. I'm organizing. I'm spreading goodwill. And I'm thinking about the next election cycle and what I, even here in Canada, whether it's for the U.S. or for Canada, can do to facilitate more hopeful messages and more decency behavior.
Gary Dierenfeld has been with us, social worker, yoursocialworker.com, talking about, of course, the Trump election and the ensuing racism. Gary, thanks very much for the time and insight. Much appreciated.
I'm going to leave you with the big I love you. If you were here in front of me, I'd even give you a hug today.
I'm loving that. Hang on, there's a squeaky chair for you. Thanks, Gary.